Podcast.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and today, for the third time, we are looking at some awful women from history. We did it for the first time in episode 106, and then again in episode 195, and I got three more women who sucked. Just were not great, deserved everything that I think happened to them at the end. I can't remember how these stories go, because... see, if you remember, I've said this before. So basically, like, where do I get all these stories? Well, it's because I write them in books. I have a 100 stories series where I have a book and there's 100 stories in them. And then I started this podcast and I was like, I'm just going to take the stories that I wrote in the books that no one read and I'm going to put them in a podcast that no one listens to. And that's what we're doing. So, I just found these women and they're in a book somewhere, but now they're here in this episode. And we're looking at the stories of Clementine Barnabet, Olga Hepranova, and Marie Besnard.
Story time. Story time. Story time? Story time.
We're going to start with the story of Clementine Barnabet, where in November of 1909, Edna Opelousas and her three children were found bludgeoned to death in their home in Rayne, Louisiana. Edna Opelousas that's just the most Cajun sounding name. Oh, Edna Opelousas, that three children found bludgeoned to death down in Rayne, Louisiana. Oh, they are in the Opelousas family. And see, God, I need to have more Louisiana stories so that I can do more Cajun Man. God, there's going to be more coming down the line, but just not enough opportunity for Cajun Man to be here. Anyway, back to the story. So November 1909, this woman and her three children bludgeoned to death in Rayne, Louisiana. A little over a year later, in January of 1911, Walter Byers, his wife, and his son were found with their skulls split open at their home in Crowley, the next town over from Rayne. After two more similar murders in Lafayette and San Antonio, police in Lafayette arrested local crazy person Raymond Barnabet. Now, at his trial, Raymond's own children testified against him that he had committed these axe murders. They even claimed that he had come home one night covered in blood, bragging that he had killed the entire Andrews family in Lafayette. Now, they didn't really have any direct evidence to link him, but they just took his own kid's testimony, and that was all the jury needed to send Raymond to prison. Again, despite having no physical evidence against him other than that he was black. And back in the early 1900s, that's all you needed. Oh, a black guy maybe did something. He was probably guilty. Let's just go ahead and let's just fix that problem. Even more, while Raymond was in jail, another family in Lafayette was murdered with an axe. The Lafayette Parish Sheriff, Louis Lacoste, was already suspicious of Raymond's kids because of how they testified against him at the trial. Raymond's kids being Zephyrin and Clementine. Love the names. Are you kidding me? Edna Opelousas, Louis Lacoste, Zephyrin Barnabet. What a name. We got to name some kids Zephyrin. God, it just sounds like a cough medicine. Oh, give me some of that old Zephyrin. Oh, get that down. Oh, got that down cough. Got the coop. Going down there and get a couple doses of Zephyrin. Anyway. So stupid. Cajun Man is the most nonsensical character that I have. It's just a words. Anyway. So Louis Lacoste, he's very suspicious of these kids. So he shows up at the Barnabet home to arrest them for the murder of the other family in Lafayette that had just gotten murdered with an axe. The sheriff also had a hunch, which was really all old-timey cops had to go on in murder trials back then, that Clementine Barnabet specifically was up to something thanks to the blood that he saw on her shoes the night that his men had actually arrested her father for all of the murders. So, after the second round of arrests of the Barnabet family, deputies went back to search the house. While there, they found a full woman's outfit soaked in blood and covered in brain matter. At that point, police felt pretty confident that they had actually found their murderer and that it wasn't Raymond Barnabet, but it was actually Clementine. Didn't matter. All three of them, Raymond, Clementine, and Zephyrin, they're all in prison. And while they were in prison, 3 more families were murdered. In January of 1912, Felix Broussard, his wife, and 3 children were murdered in Lake Charles. Police at this murder scene found a message written in blood on the wall that read, "When he maketh the inquisition for blood, he forgetteth not the cry of the humble." Now, I know my audience. I know that you all know that that is Psalms 9:12. Well, this message or this verse was signed the Human Five. When newspapers got hold of the story at this point, speculation obviously ran wild. Several media outlets began connecting the murders to human sacrifice rituals performed by voodoo gangs because Louisiana. They thought that the number 5 had something to do with it because, human 5. But because no one really knew anything about voodoo, they began just spewing all of this misinformation to try to fit their angle, such as the fact that 5 families with 5 members had been murdered. Not true. Some of the families had 6 members. Some of the families had like 3 or 4. Either way. So that was wrong. Even though Clementine was still in prison for this, news outlets pointed to her as the mastermind of the murders and as a prominent member of the voodoo gang called the Church of Sacrifice, which sounds so metal. On April 5th, 1912, Clementine eventually confessed to 17 murders. She claimed that that she had bought a voodoo charm that was supposed to give her immunity while she murdered people, and that she and several accomplices drew lots to see who got to kill the next victim. In an attempt to close the case for good, Reverend King Harris was arrested as the leader of the Church of Sacrifice. However, he actually wasn't. He was just a revival preacher who was visiting the Christ-sanctified Holy Church in Lafayette on the night of one of the murders. People in the area mistook sanctified for sacrifice, and because news outlets failed to actually check their sources, the media ran with it. So basically, the media is just so fast to try to be the first to break this story that they saw Christ sanctified Holy Church and they instead saw Christ sacrifice Holy Church. And they're like, oh, sacrifice? That's what the voodoo people were doing because they're part of the Church of Sacrifice. This must be the Church of Sacrifice they're talking about. Let's go and run with it. Except it probably didn't sound like that at all. It probably sounded like, oh, they're down there at the Sanctified Holy Church. That probably means Christ sacrifice at their Holy Church. Then that Clementine Barnabet, she over there at the Church Sacrifice. That's probably the same place. So we're going to go out there and represent their King Harris. Get King Harris, get in there for all the murders in the voodoo. Right? So you get it, right? No wonder no one knows what's going on. If that's how they all talk, no one can understand anything. A week later, Clementine confessed to more murders, bringing her grand total to 35. And at age 19, just 19 years old, she was sentenced to life in prison for these 35 murders. She tried to escape prison on July 31st, 1913, but was captured later that day. 10 years later, Clementine received a quote-unquote procedure to quote-unquote restore her to quote-unquote a normal condition, and then was released back into the world. What on, whoa, you talking about a prison medical procedure in the 19 teens? She was absolutely sterilized. 1,000%, maybe even given a lobotomy. God only knows what happened to that poor woman, but she kind of deserved it. In the end, no one really knows if Clementine actually committed all of the murders she confessed to, or if it was just kind of like a family thing that was going on or whatever. And another note on this, the reality was that Clementine's Church of Sacrifice was an offshoot of the Christ Sanctified Holy Church. Okay, so maybe the journalists weren't super wrong on that. They were wrong. Because that church in itself was an offshoot of a larger movement that had come from Chincoteague, Virginia, after they had been persecuted for their beliefs. So, diving deeper into obscure like religious history, Chincoteague, even like northeastern North Carolina, southern Virginia, there were little pockets of these religious groups who incorporated kind of the black magic from the Caribbean, the hoodoo and the voodoo, into more Christian themes and everything. And they were heavily persecuted, not just because they were black, but because they're down there, Jesus don't do no magic. And so they were all kind of split off or whatever. But this church specifically taught that salvation required both conversion and sanctification, which is the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, whatever that means, and that baptism and communion weren't actually necessary, which you might as well just slap all the Baptists and Methodists in the face for saying, oh, that's not true, that's not necessary. So anyway, all of that is to say that what was going on in Louisiana in the early 1900s, where this teenage girl, probably murdered 35 people in ritualistic sacrificial murders. Anyway, gross. Our next story here is of Marie Besnard, who was born on August 15th, 1896 in Loudun, France, where people apparently grow up to marry their cousins there. Cousin marrying. It's not just for West Virginia. It's for France, because that's exactly what Marie did. Let me just say something right here. We talk like France tries to like have this image of like sophistication. Oh, we are French. We are very sophisticated and proper. And we eat the cheese and the wine. And we don't. No, they are some of the most white trash people in all of Europe. Like, there's some pockets of serious white trash in like the UK. But I will posit that France is the Alabama of Europe. It's the Alabama, Mississippi of Europe. And then there's like Paris and Marseille. Like, nice actual. You got like the city's probably pretty sophisticated, but you go out into that French countryside, white trash. All right. So Marie Besnard, she grows up, marries her cousin. And then following her cousin husband's death from tuberculosis in 1927, she married a man named Leon Besnard, who she was not related to, but did have considerable amounts of money. So Besnard was not her birth name. It was never given, I don't think. So she marries Leon, takes his last name. And shortly after Leon's parents invited the new couple to live with them, Leon's father died after eating some bad mushrooms. And so at this point, it's pretty obvious how this story is going to go, right? Father dies after eating some bad mushrooms. 3 months later, Leon's mother dies from pneumonia, leaving the vast Besnard estate to Leon's sister, Lucy, who just so happened to conveniently commit suicide a few months later in 1940. Marie's father, Pierre, soon died after that from a brain hemorrhage, and still no one thought that this was anything other than just really bad luck for Marie. Poor girl's just losing everyone in her family left and right. Even after Marie and Leon sublet several rooms in their new mansion to Mousson and Blanche Rivet, both of those people died within a few months of each other and named Marie as their only heir. And still, no one thought anything weird was going on. In 1945, two of Marie's cousins died within 8 days of each other after both of the women mistook a bowl of lye, which is a chemical typically used to make soap, for their regular dessert. Which, how stupid do you have to be? Or maybe lye kind of looks like whatever a French dessert would look like. I don't even know what lye looks like. I'm going to pause the episode and do a Google search. Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. I think these women were actually just really stupid. Like, at best, all right, lye either looks like some shredded cheese, like finely grated cheese, like a white cheese, or it looks like cottage cheese in a bowl. And I think if you're eating cottage cheese for dessert, you're trash. You're just a trash person. So, even if, and look, we're going to just bury the lead here. Even if Marie did poison them on purpose, they deserved it. You're stupid. All right. Especially, like, how are you going to eat a whole bowl of it? Like, after the first bite, in your mouth, you're going to realize, hey, this isn't my dessert. I'm not going to eat this. I'm going to spit this out. But no, they kept eating it. So no, not doing that. Anyway, even more, Marie's mother died a few months later on January 16th, 1945. So let's recap here so far. All right. Marie, she marries Leon. All right. Leon's father, mother, and sister all died. All right. Then they sublet the new mansion that they moved into. 2 people died there. Marie's father died. Her 2 cousins died. And then her mother died. All right. So while all of these people in Marie's life were dying, AKA being murdered, Leon, he was out having an affair. And Marie eventually found out about this. And what's crazy is that Leon died of uremia on October 25th, 1947. Uremia being urine in the blood. Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it was blood in the urine for a second, but no, it's urine in the blood. So basically, he just peeing inside of his blood vessels, and then his blood's going all around, so he's just full pee body, right? So a few days after Leon's funeral, one of his friends went to the police and told them that Leon had been thinking that Marie was, actively poisoning him, which at this point is super obvious to you, but is apparently a brand new idea for everybody else in this story. Within weeks, Leon's body, along with the bodies of everyone else I have mentioned so far in this story, were exhumed and found to have crazy levels of arsenic in their system. Marie was quickly arrested and charged with 13 counts of murder. However, after 3 separate trials, failed to convince anyone that Marie had poisoned all of these people, mainly because one study proved that arsenic had the ability to seep into the soil from fertilizers and actually contaminate the corpses, along with a complete mishandling of other evidence by the prosecutors during these trials that just messed everything up. Marie was actually acquitted in 1961 and was allowed to live the rest of her life off of the wealth that she had inherited from everyone around her that had died, aka murdered, until she herself died in 1980. So she basically got away with it. She basically got away with murdering 13 people because the French courts were like, oh, but wait, we use arsenic in the fertilizer for the soil, and the fertilizer can seep into the ground. Why are we fertilizing a cemetery? Huh? Why are we really doing that much in our cemeteries, France? That we're going to just assume that all of this arsenic, that lethal levels of arsenic in 13 different grave sites seeped into the soil and then seeped in through the caskets and then into the bodies. Come on, France. You're better than that. Maybe not. Anyway, so Marie benefited from a lot of stupid people in her life and got away with it. Anyway, our last story here is of Olga Hepranova, who was born on June 30th, 1951 in Prague to a bank clerk and a dentist. Although her life started out normal, she developed mental issues that many people thought were signs of Asperger's syndrome. So here we go. All right. This is a little relatable to your boy here. I hate how even I wrote this sentence. She developed mental issues that many people thought were signs of Asperger's. Oh, so she was just what? Antisocial? Oh, she was what? Not great with interpersonal communication? Oh, what? She was just like super into trains or something? Oh God, what a crazy person. Anyway, she tried committing suicide in 1964 at age 13 by overdosing on her medications, but she failed. After spending a year in a psychiatric ward, she tried and failed to hold various jobs, eventually found stable work as a truck driver, shut off communication with her family, and bought a cabin in Olesko, a small village about an hour north of Prague. Although she had lost contact with her parents, Olga still thought about them pretty regularly and wanted to help them out in any way she could. She knew that they had purchased a farm and that it was the source of a lot of financial arguments within the family because a lot of times the farm was struggling. This is communist, Czech Republic. everything sucks up there. And so even when you do something that's potentially profitable, like a farm, government's like, no, and takes everything, and you don't really have any money. So you just have to like break your back working this farm, right? Well, on August 7th, 1970, she went over to the farm in the middle of the night and just set the whole thing on fire, hoping to destroy it so that she could end all of the family's infighting. However, the people who were living inside, apparently who was not her family, they were just described as tenants of the farm, managed to put the fire out before it actually destroyed everything. So that didn't work. And then by 1973, Olga had come to believe that everyone in the world was trying to hurt her. But rather than seek help, she figured that she actually needed to hurt everyone else before they could attack her first. And like, I get it. Like, I'm not saying I agree with it, but I get the logic, right? Like, in my own life, I have thought like, oh man, what if everybody's just trying to like keep this real big secret from me? Like, everybody knows something about me that I don't. Like, and for a while I thought it was like something good. And then I realized like, oh no, everybody just knew I was pretty autistic. And then I found out on my own and whatever. But Olga, she's like, oh man, everybody's out to get me, but I'm going to be proactive here. I'm going to get everyone first. They'll never see it coming. And so she originally planned to derail an entire train, but that felt too complicated. And I get it, right? Trains are very heavy. It's real hard to kind of get them off the tracks. You can't just like stack pennies on the rails and then like the train is too heavy. It's going too fast. So it's real hard to do that. Right. So that felt too complicated. So then she decided to detonate a bomb in a crowded room. The problem there was she had no idea how to obtain a bomb, much less build one. So that one's out too. Well, like so many unstable people before and after her, Olga decided that she could just get a gun and open fire on a busy street. And so she got started on this. She joined a shooting club to practice, but then realized like she's at the gun range. She's, practicing her target practice or whatever. And then she changed her mind. She had a change of heart from not doing a mass shooting. And this goes to show how well we, as those on the spectrum, think things through, right? Because she realized that, oh, wait, if I, conduct a mass shooting, I could also get shot because other people have guns. I will not be the only person with a gun after a little bit. Like, the police will show up and quickly shoot me. And there's also probably military around because it's communist Czech Republic. The military is everywhere. I'm going to get shot, and getting shot probably hurts. So we're not going to do that. Instead, she came up with her best idea. And by best, probably not. So on July 10th, 1973, Olga hopped into a military-style truck and sped towards Strassmeyer Square. When she arrived, she saw a group of 25 people standing on the sidewalk waiting for the tram. Olga's like, that's it. Those are my people. They're the ones who are out to get me, but I'm going to get them first. I'm going to do it. And so she drove the truck up onto the sidewalk and into this group of 25 people, which they broke the truck's momentum. All 25 of them just acted as a big barricade and forced the truck to a complete stop. And again, at Olga's like mental acuity stops here. She did not think this all the way through. She just thought she could just drive a truck through a bunch of people and keep going. But she did not plan on the truck running over this big group of people and getting stuck. And so because she was bad at being a villain and everyone just kind of thought another bad woman driver had just made a mistake, people actually rushed over to help this woman. They're like, oh no, a woman got behind the wheel again and she messed everything up, as they always do. We got to go help her. And so they go over and they try to help her. At that point, she refuses the help. And she's like, no, I did on purpose. I'm not bad driver. I good driver. I accomplish goal. And at that point, they were like, oh, okay, well, then we're just going to arrest you here. And so 8 people that she had run over died. 12 more were seriously injured. 2 days after the event, local newspapers published a letter that Olga had sent them prior to the attacks, though thanks to communism and the Czech mail service, the letter actually arrived after she had carried out the attack. Which is like, and that's, I mean, look, 2 days should be enough time for the mail to get to the next city over, but it didn't. And so the letter in part says, I am a loner, a destroyed woman, a woman destroyed by people. I have a choice to kill myself or to kill others. I choose to pay back my haters. It was in all caps. It would be too easy to leave this world as an unknown suicide victim. Society is too indifferent, and rightly so. My verdict is I, Olga Hepranova, the victim of your bestiality, sentence you to death. Why bestiality? Why? I don't know. That's bit of strong language. Anyway, she was hanged on March 12th, 1975.
All done.
All right, there we go. Awful Women from History, Part 3 in the books. Let's recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, Clementine Barnabet, teenager, killed maybe 35 people with an axe in a voodoo blood sacrifice called Cajun Man extravaganza in Louisiana. Just like, I think they have, maybe even American Horror Story like incorporated parts of her story into one of their seasons. But God, just this entire story needs to be made into a bigger like TV show, action movie, something, because it's really crazy. Number 2, Marie Besnard murdered like 13 people in her family, and no one thought it was weird. And she even got away with it because the French are stupid, apparently. And then number 3, Olga Hepranova, sister on the spectrum, rammed a car into a busy square, and then people were just like, oh, women can't drive. She must have done that on accident. But she didn't. She did it on purpose and then accused everyone of bestiality for some reason. So, I don't know.
What did we learn?
Next week on Our Weird World, we're doing another part 3. This time, more demented doctors. 3 doctors from history who did not follow the Hippocratic Oath and weren't great at their job. And by great, I mean they were great at killing people, because that's what a lot of them did. So we're going to look at the stories of Harold Shipman, Michael Swango, and Oliver Hoff next week. So thank you for listening. Keep telling all your friends about the show, and keep it weird.
This is a podcast.